and welcome to String of Ideas Craft. My name's Alison and today we're going to make one of these cases. This particular one was made for a handy pack of tissues, but they can be used for all types of items. The one I'm going to make today is going to be a glasses case. Here on the table you can see I've cut and prepped my fabric ready to use. You will need to make this item an outer piece of back fabric and the lining to match, and the outer piece of front fabric and the lining to match. You will also need a small square of fabric which will make this tab to clip onto your bag or whatever you want it to at the end of the day. In the frame here I've got the front piece of fabric all pinned in, ready to go into the embroidery machine, as this particular one is going to have some text on it. I'm now going to pop it into the machine to start the embroidery. Right, I'm now going to clip my frame into the embroidery machine. On the front of the screen here I've got my text up ready and everything's all ready to go. So basically we're just going to start stitching. Okay, right, we've done the embroidery on this one now, and we're going to put the pieces together ready to go onto the sewing machine. So what we need is the two pieces of fabric that will make the front part. Just pin those together. Then we have the two pieces of fabric that make the back part. Make sure they're lined up nicely at the top. Pop a couple of pins in. And then we will also make sure you've got right sides together, the little tube piece, and we'll just pop a pin in there. Then we're going to pop over to the sewing machine and sew all the pieces together. Now we're at the sewing machine, we're now just going to sew across the pieces that we've pinned. Making sure that we keep the fabric lined up to the foot so we can keep as straight as possible. Just do a back stitch, cut that thread, just pop the front piece underneath, and we do the same again, making sure that we've got the same seam allowance. So I've lined up my fabric to the edge of the foot. You can do it wherever you feel more comfortable. Back stitch again, just cut the thread, and then we just do this little tab piece. Now on this one you don't want to go quite so far across. Okay, right, we've just finished at the machine, so we've stitched across the top here. I've just used some pinking shears just to neaten off the edge, but if you haven't got them it doesn't matter because it will be inside anyway. We've done that on both the front and the back. Right, we lay out either the front or the back on the board, it really doesn't matter which way around you do it. But what you need to do is make sure that you line everything up properly. The little tab that we had on the side where the clip goes, I've just literally pinned about a third of the way down between the two outer fabrics. Then you need to line up your bottom pieces, make sure everything's nice and neat, and pin what will be all the way around the edge. When we get up here, just make sure that's lined up. And then go back down to the bottom, so you're lining from the bottoms up to the middle. Again, making sure that all your edges are straight. On the bottom, this being the lining fabric, you need to leave a little gap so you won't be sewing the whole way around. You'll need a little gap here because we need to turn it through at that point towards the end of making it. And we just pin up this side again, make sure all the edges are all straight. And you pin up, make sure this is all pulled tight, pin up to the point where you're meeting the floral fabric. so just there, which will leave this flap piece, and again you would pin up to where your sewing join is in there, and then we just go around this last piece and make sure that we're all nice and neat. On the outer fabric you pin all the way around, you don't leave a piece at the bottom for turning. We don't need to turn a turning gap on that. Okay, then we have to go over to the machine again. Now we're at the machine and we're ready to start sewing. We're going to start where we had the gap for the turning through piece, so we'll work our way around from there. Again, make sure that you keep your fabric lined up either against your foot or in the middle, wherever you feel comfortable. Make sure as you go in that you remove your pins. I like to do one back step when I come to a corner. It just gives it that extra little bit of stability. Again, make sure you remove your pins and keep an eye that you're following whatever line you've chosen. Right, when we get here, this will be where like the top piece is. You have to go very steady and slow. You only want to go as far as you can just feel a ridge. Do one back, lift your needle out of the fabric. Then you need to go the other side and come up as close as you can get to that ridge and start your stitching again from there. Take your time on the line. Okay, we're now back at the table. I've just pinking sheared the edges just to neaten them off, but again, if you've not got a pair of pinking shears, it really isn't essential because it's all going to be on the inside anyway. Right, you need to get to the little hole that we left earlier in the lining fabric, and you need to be very careful and take your time, and we need to start turning through. It's a bit of a long winded process. Sometimes it comes through quite easily and other times it can be a bit of a pain. It can be a little bit like watching paint dry, but I do apologise. Try and take through. Just take it gently and slowly so you don't rip any of the seams. See, it suddenly starts to appear. Get a bit of a tap, I get that bit through, and then I just use one of these little, anything that's got a nice smooth end. You don't want anything like a pair of scissors like these with a pointy end, because you'll end up poking a hole in the corner. But if you get something with a nice rounded end, and just pop it in, take it all the way to the top, and then poke out your corners. Do it nice and gently so you don't get any holes or anything. And then you've got this little piece here. Again, you want to poke out the corners. Take your time. You want to poke into any of your seams and create a hole. You get a nice crisp corner. And then at the end where the hole is, again, just poke out. It's just a tiny little corner there. That one's a little fiddly. And then you'll be left with your gap, which it sort of self-folds, turns in on itself, and then just let me grab a pin, pop a little pin in there, and we'll stitch across there in a minute. Just make sure everything's pulled out and you're happy with how it's turned before we sew that bit. And as you can see here, the little loop itself has popped out, and yeah, we're just going to stitch. So I'm just going to go to the machine and stitch this bit, and then I'll come straight back and just show you the last little step. Right, we're now back at the board. I've got one of these ironing pads. It just is easier for me in the craft room to use this rather than an ironing board, but by no means is it essential. Right, we've now got it all here turned through, and I'm just going to give it a quick iron just to give it a nice crisp finish. It's always nice just to do this before turning through your items. Just gives it that nice little professional finish. Just sort of finishes off the edges nicely. We'll pop back to one side, and then I've got my little tool that I use for turning through. Okay, so you've got your outer fabric, you've got your lining fabric, and then there'll be the piece here which will be your flap at the end of it. You need to open these two bits out where they meet and tuck the lining fabric inside the outer fabric, pushing it down, and then if you grab this tool, helps you just poke down into the bottom. Take your time with it and make sure you've got the lining all the way in. Okay, and then we're ready to pop on your popper. Will go on the top here. Okay, right, we're at the last stage now, and we're just going to put the popper on, which is just this piece here that fastens it together. Okay, I've got one of these little popper machines here. I'll close the top flap down and just sort of figure out by eye where I'd like it to be, and I think about there is fine. So that's the top piece which cups into there. And then I get the bottom part of that which fits over the top, and you literally push the two together, hold for a few seconds, and your popper's in place. Then it's basically same process again with the other parts to this popper. Again, make sure you're happy with the position, get a bit of an eye for where you need it to be. This bit's a little bit more fiddlier because you've not got an awful lot of room to work. Basically, you can feel where it is. Pop that over the top and squeeze into place. And there you go. One little glasses case ready to go to its new home. I hope you enjoyed that video. Thank you for watching. If you have any ideas for future videos, just pop them in the comments below.